Welcome to the Passport to Pastries camp. My name is Olivia, and today we're going to be making Bavarian pretzels from Germany and crepes from France. Pretzels and crepes are considered pastries because their dough is made out of flour, water, and butter, and they can be either sweet or savory. Inside your clover crate, you will find the following: your recipes, salted butter, sugar, sea salt, yeast, baking soda, salt, milk, flour, and an Iowa State spatula. To begin, you're going to preheat your oven to 450 degrees. Then you're going to prepare your tray either with parchment paper or by spraying it down. Today we're going to use parchment paper. That's all good. Set it aside. In a large bowl, stir together 1 cup of flour, yeast, sugar, 2 tablespoons of softened butter, and 1 1/3 cup of water. Next, stir in the salt and 2 cups of flour gradually. You're going to stir until the dough can be picked up and kneaded on the counter. The next step is to divide the dough into 6 even pieces. While the dough is resting, we're going to put the 3 cups of water into a pot to boil. This will be the water bath that the pretzels sit in before they go in the oven. Now we're going to make the dough balls into the classic pretzel shape. So now you're going to take your dough ball and roll it out into a 15-inch long rope. You're going to want to make it a little longer than 15 inches because then it shrinks back. The next step is to make a U shape, and then with the top 2 end pieces, you're going to twist them around each other 2 times and then bring them down to the bottom of the U and pinch to secure it. Once the water is boiling, you can pour in the baking soda. Then you're going to remove it from the heat. Now you're going to dip your pretzels into the water bath for 40 seconds and flip halfway through. Using a slotted spoon in your fingers, you can flip the pretzel over. Now you can take it out with the spoon in your finger and let it drain just a little bit into the pot, and then put it on your tray. Adjust it a little bit. Now you're going to brush 2 tablespoons of melted butter on top of your unbaked pretzels. After 8 to 10 minutes in the oven, they should look like this, golden brown, and then you can put them on the counter and let them cool. Enjoy! Now for our second recipe, we're going to make the French crepes. You're going to start off by putting all of these ingredients into the blender. Now you're going to blend until smooth. Heat the small pan, lightly oil it. Let it get nice and warm before you add your crepe batter. To begin to cook the crepe, you're going to use 2 tablespoons of batter, or a little bit more if you have a larger pan like me today. We're going to pour it onto the pan, tip it around a little bit, cover the bottom. And you'll begin to see bubbles forming all the way around the crepe. And once the liquid in the middle of the crepe is thicker, then it's time to flip. When it's about time to flip, you're going to go around the edges with your spatula. Just lift off the crepe from the pan. Then you're going to get your spatula underneath the crepe pretty far. Lift it up and flip. Kind of adjust to make it flat. Once you've made all of your crepes, you can put them on a plate. You can either fold them like this or leave them open, and you can put fruit inside, whipped cream, Nutella, whatever you like. Be creative.
You know, patty is considered a Dutch pastry, but the original Dutch pastry is this, is the letter. Made in Holland with lots of almond. You can see the almonds sticking out there. There's about 2 ounces of almond in here. How we make these, we roll out the almond, it's nice and thick, and then we roll it in the pastry and cut the pastry up. However, the story goes that when the original Dutch settlers came to Northwest Iowa, this is quite expensive because the almond there's a lot of almond in there. So the original Dutch settlers were very poor, and they couldn't afford this big Dutch letter. And so the bakers in the area thinned out the almond and then used a pastry bag to squirt it onto the pastry, and then they would just fold it over. And they ended up with a little product like this, and they chopped it up into little sections, and they could sell this for way less than the letter. And so this became Dutch pastry here in Northwest Iowa. So today I want to just show you how we make the almond patties. Basically, we need to keep the table from getting sticky because we don't want the pastry to stick down, so we gotta get some flour on the table. This is our puff pastries. When we make the puff pastry, we make our batch makes 10 of these at one time, and so we freeze them so that unless we're making pastries for the Tool Festival, we won't use a terrible lot of puff pastry at one time, so we keep it frozen so it's nice and fresh. Put it on our reversible sheeter, and go back and forth a whole bunch of times. When our reversible sheeter is like a giant rolling pin, but the table moves. Instead of the rolling pin moving, the table moves. And let's start with our sheeter wide open. See everything moved up, and it's quite a bit open through here now. Let's see if the pastry's going to come right through there. To pick up the pastry, this isn't to flatten it out. This is for picking up the pastry so that I can move it. And this is a lot of pastry dough here, and it's very delicate. Roll it up on that. The next thing we want to do is shrink the pastry, because pastry right now is all stretched out like this. And we want to shrink it back together so that it doesn't shrink on its own, because otherwise our pastry will turn out smaller than what we really want it to be. So this is how we shrink the pastry. We just kind of pull it backwards. We'll pull in a little bit more here, a little bit more here. For the almond patties, I make strips. We're not trying to cut all the way through the pastry necessarily, although it's nice if it does. It makes it just a little easier for coming back through later. But we do want to at least make a mark. We're going to use this top piece a little later, so I'm going to twist it so that I can use it along the edge of the pan to keep the almond from spilling out while it's baking. It's a mixture of water and almond and sugar and just a little bit of flour to hold it all together when it bakes. We're just going to put the almond paste right in the pastry bag. I'm like a cat. I don't like getting my paws dirty. And you start from the top because you watch here, I got a little extra here, so if I lean over and I start from this side, I drag my stomach through this and then we have a mess. So we just want to put a nice line of almond down like that. Now we're going to fold them over. And when you're folding this dough over, you want to make sure you don't let it stick down too much or it'll stick to each other. So you see I'm kind of holding it up as I go here. The almond patties, we like to overlap them just a little bit. That helps so that they don't pull open when they're baking. We set them right on, just a little bit on top of the one before it. We're going to bake these. We would take a mixture of egg and water and brush that over top of them so that they get a nice little glaze to them. And then we take sugar and put a line of sugar right down each row here so that it's got a nice little sugar on the top too that gives it a little bit of a crust. I started baking when I was a kid. My older sister made cookies on Saturday because my dad liked cookies, but then she graduated from high school and went off to college, and I had two older brothers. They were helping my dad outside, and so I kind of got shanghaied into being the baker. My mom taught me how to make cookies, and I just took it from there and started following recipes on my own and making more and more things. Got so that I could make more sophisticated things, and just really enjoyed the whole process of making something from scratch. And I ended up buying a bakery and do it for a living now. So start small and simple, follow the recipe. And as you get older, get more adventurous, and try new things, and keep baking.